We're in the stripy tank top, so that means we're doing some car work. Not working on one of mine, I'm working on this one you can see behind me, which belongs to a friend. And we're going to try and fix a couple of minor issues that it's got. It's a pretty good car, I'll show you more detail in a minute. It just needs a little bit of minor attention. What we have here is a Rover 214 SI. It's a fairly early one, being a G-Reg. And you can't see the problem from here because it's hiding behind this. We might get on to just a little bit of bubbling here. Being a white car, obviously any sort of rust always looks much worse. So we're going to clean that back and have a look, see what that needs. But other than that, we're mostly okay, except it has one really annoying problem. The annoying problem is not opening the tailgate. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't latch. So let's see about fixing that first. Just very quickly took out the parcel shelf, the carpet, the board that goes over the spare wheel. It does have a water ingress problem. You can see there's quite a puddle in here. I'm hoping we can find out what the cause of that is and solve that. It's probably the seal on this light. They're fairly well known for it, these cars. Hopefully that's an easy fix and we can get that dried out. And normally I would just raise this striker down here if the tailgate wasn't latching, but it's right at the top of its adjustment, so I have no more adjustment to get there. This is a little glimpse at what needs repairing. I'll come back to that in a minute. Up here on the tailgate itself, you can see there is adjustment available here, and it has been adjusted before. So I shall slack off these, and I'll see if I can bring this down, and maybe then it'll latch. It could just be that somebody's tried to do this before, not quite tightened the bolts up, and this has moved, and that's why we had the latching problem. These little bolts are 8mm, and I've dropped this latch as far down as I possibly can, and I think I've fixed it. The problem with this before is that you would have to repeatedly slam it over and over and over, and it wouldn't latch. And it's doing it again. Yep. There's more wrong than adjustment on this. I am not really sure what's going on, so I'm going to try cleaning up the latch. Sometimes that helps. Something's off somewhere. These shouldn't be this difficult to shut. After a bit of tweaking and fiddling, I think I've finally got it. It's not ideal, but it latches now. And it's certainly better than it was. I'll just refit this little rubber thing to the latch at the bottom because I took that off to try and get some more clearance. We'll see if it still closes with that in place. That's that little rubbery thing back in place, and I think it's shutting about as well as it's going to. It will just have to do. Okay, we're doing a partial strip down on the interior before we start the work on this, just to inspect what we've got. Mostly things look pretty good. It's a bit dirty and grubby, as you expect in a wheel well, but there's no serious rot problems here. This is the water that's getting in probably through that light seal, and then back here this is what needs repairing. So we're going to have to clean all that back and see what we've got. Over here, I haven't yet removed this trim, but you have several crosshead screws that go into that trim there, and then several along the top. And once you've got those out, you then very carefully pry this carpety section out,
and just be careful when you're around this corner because it's quite fragile and it's very easy to tear and break this section here. So just hold in with clips and those screws. Okay, there we are, that's that side off. There is a little bit of corrosion there to deal with, but not today. That's not on the cards. Now, next thing that needs to come off here is the bumper, and for that there is this bolt here with a nut on it and another one that side, and then you can't really see it, but down the side of the car you've got your vent here, and then there's a slider further back, so when you undo those two bolts you slide the bumper back. And given how nice and square this bumper sits on this car, I don't think we're going to really have any problems with bumper brackets and things, so that's good too. Right, I'm under the back of the car here because Peter reminded me, because he's here to help today. There's a couple of screws underneath the car on the bottom of the bumper. These are crosshead ones. You can see there's a splash guard here, which I think is what they're for. Same again on the other side. Once they're removed, we can then pull this off. There we go, that's one bumper off. You can see these are the very long bolts that were visible inside, and then you have two sliders up here which go onto these little metal studs on the back, and that holds your bumper up in place on the sides. On the saloons it's slightly different because the back end on the saloon is a bit longer. This is the little bit of bodywork here. It doesn't look terrible, to be honest with you. I think we'll just clean it back and see what's behind that. The really nice thing is this back panel is in great shape. As Peter's told me, this is all original paint down here. The car has had some work done, but it didn't need it on this panel, which is super, and still doesn't. And then here, this side of this lip actually looks pretty good. There's a small crack here, like a stress crack. I might need to replace that section. It might just weld. And there's a little bit just coming through here. But overall, this isn't bad. The other side of it's quite good. It's just this panel, which we have a donor piece for. So I'm hoping this isn't too bad once we clean it up. And it should be a fairly straightforward repair. Had a quick clean out in the boot. Cleaned out the water. There's not really any rot to speak of, which is nice. Yeah, let's get the angry disc out and get this cleaned up. I'm going to make light work of this because we've got more hands. You can just see here where there's some spot welds. So Peter's going to drill out the spot welds on this donor panel because the piece we need is this outer shell. We don't really need this section, and we don't need the latch from this one, which is on a different piece anyway. So Peter will strip that down for me. And then I can deal with this, and I'm not going to drill the spot welds out here. I'm going to cheat and use a cutting disc, and we're just going to chop off this panel on here, and then I'll use the flat disc to take the spot weld locations down. So this then ends up being nice clean metal that I can weld to, and the donor panel then ends up pre-drilled, so we should be able to just puddle weld everything back together, and it should be very quick. Well, that was a messy job. We've got the donor piece stripped down and all the bits we don't need taken off. Peter had cut this a little bit larger, so we do have the corner piece that we need that's rotted out, so that's going to save me some fabrication time. All the old rotten pieces there, and I've dressed out the replacement panel as best I can. It's going to be easier once it's in the car. Dress this lip straight again. There's a few repairs to do there, not anything huge. One hole to do here, that's what that donor section's for. And this panel it's just loosely there, I've not aligned it, but the fit is pretty good. So that should go quite well. But it is lunchtime now. I am going to get something to eat because I'm more than ready. And then we can get this welded into place. One of the bits that Peter made sure we got on the donor panel was a cut for this section, which has rotted through, so that saved me so much time on fabrication, and it's only just big enough for the rust hole that's there. I've marked everything up for what needs cutting out, and I'll chop all that out, and also the bits of pitting on this lip, because this is just a straight piece. This is a really easy repair, which is nice. I just need to weld some strips in. Peter's gone to get some weld through primer. We've just found out that we've run out, and that's really good for doing on the back of pieces like this. Helps prevent the rust, and it doesn't burn off as much when you're doing the welding. First bit of repair done. This section now is welded in. I've got the lip repaired under here. I just need a couple of spot weld holes drilled in there so I can tack that down, and I need to grind these welds back to clean it up before we paint it, but that was a nice easy repair because of the donor section. Before I add the interior panel here, I've got to put these pieces in. Shouldn't be too difficult, but the metal is very thin on an R8, so it can be a little bit tricky, and I'm butt welding this. I'm not overlapping it. We don't want any rust traps if we can help it, but I'm hopeful that this is just going to go fairly smoothly. We shall see. It's a really nice day today, and that's helping a lot with the mood. And of course, having Peter here, he's tinkering at the front end, is really good motivation to just keep cracking on with a job like this. Right, it's a short while later. We've got all of this lip repaired. It's ground back as much as it needs to be, and I've got this section here put in, ready to go. It's fine that it's a not quite perfect job because all of this is hidden behind seals and bumpers and you never see it, so it's more important that it's strong, which it is. The panel here is all prepped. It's got, you know, a bit of weld through paint on the back of it, and the majority of the original paint is still on there. We'll deal with that once it's attached to the car, and that'll be easier. So it's just a case now of getting this on here and doing a lot of plug welding. There we go, we're all welded up, flattered back. Peter's thrown some paint on it, and there's no seam sealer or anything in here yet, no filler at all, and that's gone really well. Certainly a good bit better than I was expecting. I suppose that's the difference it makes when you've got a donor panel from another car, so you have a factory fit. We've got to let that to dry, and then we can start building everything back up, put the latch on, all that kind of business. But there is a bit more work to do, so there's no point cleaning everything out just yet. This will be good enough. All in, not a bad day's work on this. Actually went a lot better than either of us was really expecting. Didn't fight us too much. There's definitely still a problem with that tailgate latch, but this is a problem this car has apparently always had. One thing I will note is since we did this lower panel, everything feels a lot more rigid back here, unsurprisingly. There are no longer big rust holes in it. And while the work isn't factory perfect, it's certainly strong enough for what this car is and what needed to be done here. Now do bear in mind this isn't the final finish. We ran out of time today, so we needed to get this weatherproof. And Peter threw on some white diamond rover paint that I happen to have left over from my old 414. And we have all of the paint burn under here and all that sort of thing, because the point is we just want this protected from the weather until we get another time period to work together on it, which might be a couple of weeks because of our work schedules. Happily, everything is all welded in and tidy, and all of this area gets covered up with a trim anyway, so none of the work will be visible. But it's good and strong. We don't have the big rust holes in here anymore, and this is an original panel off another Rover. We just need to figure out what on earth is going on with this latch and why it doesn't, without a really good slam.
Thank you for watching the video today. A little bit of a diversion with this one. I don't normally work on other people's cars. And do check the description below. There's all kinds of ways you can support the channel. Videos like this also go out early on Patreon before they actually go out on YouTube. So if you want to see what I'm up to before everybody else, that's where to go to find out. Again, description box below for all the information. That's it for today. I will see you again in a future video. So subscribe, and that will let you know when something is going to come out. We do a little bit of everything here, but we never spend very much money. See you next time. Almost forgot, just a little bit I'm adding on the end here. This wheel arch just needed the paint sanding back and redoing. There was some reaction on a layer underneath all of these various layers of paint that had caused those minor rust marks. Dealt with, repainted, done.